When I got married, I didn't mention that I'd inherited 3 homes from my grandmother. And thank God I kept quiet because just a week later my mother-in-law showed up. With a notary. My name is Claire Whitman. I'm 31. And if you think marriage makes families closer, stay tuned. When Grandma passed, she left me everything she'd built over a lifetime of careful saving. 2 beach cottages and a suburban house she'd called the Willow Home. She made me promise one thing: never let greed live under your roof. At the time I didn't understand what she meant, but soon I would. My husband Ethan was charming, ambitious, and the only son of Margaret Whitman, a woman who treated charity like sin and control like oxygen. From the moment we got engaged, she insisted on handling our finances. "You're young, dear," she'd coo. "I've managed the family's assets for decades. Let me guide you." I smiled politely and said I'd think about it while quietly opening my own accounts and keeping my inheritance sealed in trust. The wedding was elegant but cold. Margaret had planned every inch down to the color of the napkins. When we moved into a modest apartment downtown, she visited constantly, criticizing my curtains, my cooking, my job. Still, Ethan adored her, blinded by habit. I tried to stay patient until that Friday morning. I woke up to knocking. Margaret stood at the door, pearls glinting, a smug smile on her face, and a man beside her holding a thick folder. "Good morning, Claire," she chirped. "We just need your signature. It's a minor property arrangement, family planning, you know." Her eyes gleamed with something almost triumphant. I glanced at Ethan, who looked suddenly nervous. "What property arrangement?" I asked, heartbeat rising. The notary opened the folder, and I saw the name of my grandmother's estate typed in bold. My pulse thundered as I read the heading. "Transfer of property ownership, Whitman Family Estate Division." My grandmother's name, my inheritance, my private life exposed. "Where did you get this?" I demanded, gripping the folder so tight the pages crumpled. Margaret smiled like a cat who'd cornered its prey. "Oh, don't be dramatic, dear. Ethan mentioned your little inheritance when we were finalizing your joint financials. I thought it was time to integrate it into the family trust." "That's what wives do, sure." Ethan shifted beside her, guilt flashing across his face. "I didn't mean for her to what?" I snapped. "Hire a notary behind my back." Margaret's tone turned syrupy. "Now, Claire, don't be defensive. Marriage is about unity. What's yours is his, and what's his? Well, let's be honest. You married into comfort." Her words sliced through me. Comfort. I'd worked since 16, through college, through loss. Those houses weren't luck. They were legacy. "I'm not signing anything," I said quietly. The notary blinked, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, your husband already agreed. He doesn't own them." I cut in. "They're under my name and trust, and I'll thank you not to touch a single document without counsel present." Margaret's mask slipped. "Don't take that tone with me, young lady. You think keeping secrets makes you clever. Ethan is family. You'll learn that being a Whitman means loyalty, means obedience." I finished for her. "And I'm not that kind of Whitman." She glared, lips trembling. "You'll regret embarrassing this family." I took the folder, tore the top page clean in half, and handed the pieces back. "If I ever see my name attached to anything you've drafted, I'll file a fraud report." Ethan stood frozen between us, color draining from his face. Margaret hissed, "You're making a mistake, Claire. You'll ruin your marriage." I looked her dead in the eye. "No, you just showed me what it really was." And I closed the door on both of them, but something told me she wasn't finished. Not even close. That night the silence in our apartment felt heavier than walls. Ethan paced the living room, running his hands through his hair. "You overreacted," he said finally. I turned from the window. Overreacted. "Your mother brought a notary to steal my inheritance." "She wasn't stealing. She was trying to protect us," he said, his voice rising. "You're being paranoid." Ooh, the word that men use when they've run out of excuses. I took a slow breath. "You told her about the houses, didn't you?" He hesitated, and that pause was louder than any confession. "I thought she could help manage them," he admitted. "She's good with property law." I laughed, a sound so hollow it almost scared me. "She's good at controlling people, there's a difference." He slammed his hand against the table. "You think I'd let her hurt you?" I met his eyes. "You already did." The fight bled into silence. He slept on the couch. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, every word echoing. Unity, family, loyalty, all the things she used as weapons. By morning, Ethan was gone. No note, no message, just gone. I tried to work, but the anxiety crawled under my skin. By evening, I checked my email and froze. A forwarded message from my grandmother's lawyer. Following your request for early title review, please confirm we are to transfer access to the Whitman family office. My heart stopped. I hadn't made any request. I called immediately. This is Claire Whitman who authorized that. The lawyer hesitated. We received written approval with your signature attached. Impossible, I whispered. He emailed the document while I was still on the line. When it arrived, my stomach twisted. The signature? It was mine, perfectly forged. Margaret. I hung up and stared at the screen. She wasn't just scheming, she was breaking the law. And if she thought I'd back down, she hadn't met the granddaughter of a leaner stone, the woman who taught me how to fight with silence and paper. By the next morning, I was sitting across from my grandmother's old attorney, Mr. Caldwell, a silver-haired man who'd known our family for decades. His office smelled like old books and quiet power. He studied the forged signature, his eyes narrowing. Flawless pen pressure, he murmured, but not your rhythm. Whoever did this did it professionally. I swallowed hard. Can she get away with it? He looked up. Not if you act fast. We'll lock your assets, initiate a fraud investigation, and freeze any pending requests, but you must stay calm. People like Margaret Whitman thrive on reaction. I nodded, gripping my coffee until my hands shook. That evening, I came home to find Ethan waiting in the hallway, dark circles under his eyes, guilt written all over his face. Claire, we need to talk, he said. About your mother forging my signature, I asked quietly. He flinched. She told me she just handled some paperwork. She said you'd agreed. She lied, Ethan, again, and you believed her again. He sighed. You don't understand her. She's not evil, she's just controlling, she's criminal. I corrected. There's a difference. He looked at me, desperation in his eyes. You're going to ruin our family. I stepped closer. Ethan, your mother forged legal documents to steal what my grandmother left me. She ruined it herself. He turned away, hands on his head. If she goes down, it destroys my father's company. My entire family's name. I stared at him. So I'm supposed to be collateral damage to protect a last name. He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. That night, I moved out. Just a suitcase and the photo of my grandmother smiling by her garden. I checked into a hotel and called Mr. Caldwell. File everything I said. Every document, every forgery, every transfer attempt I wanted on record. By midnight, my lawyer emailed confirmation. The fraud case was filed. And by dawn, Margaret would find out the hard way that the girl she thought was naive had learned to fight exactly where it hurt most, in writing. By sunrise, the first wave hit. Margaret's attorney called my office furious. Mrs. Whitman is deeply upset about the false accusations you've made. False, I said calmly. Then I'm sure she won't mind showing the forensic report on that forged signature. There was silence on the other end. Then a click. That afternoon, Ethan showed up at my new place, disheveled, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. He looked less like a husband and more like a man who'd realized too late which side he'd chosen. Claire, Mom's panicking. She's saying you're trying to destroy her reputation. I folded my arms. Her reputation forged my name. He ran his hand down his face. You're escalating this too far. I laughed bitterly. No, Ethan, she did. You just gave her the pen. He looked at me helplessly. Can't we fix this privately, without court, privately, I repeated. She sent a notary to my door. She forged legal documents. This stopped being private the moment she made it public. For a moment, the weight of his choices crushed him. He whispered, I never thought it would go this far. I softened slightly. Neither did I, but this isn't about revenge. It's about respect. Something your family never learned. He left without another word. The next morning, Mr. Caldwell called. Claire, brace yourself. Margaret's assets have been frozen pending review. The investigators traced the forged documents' digital trail to her assistant's device. I sat down slowly, absorbing it. So, it's official. Yes, he said, and the district attorney will likely press charges. I looked out the window. The city buzzed below, alive and indifferent. For the first time in months, I felt steady. That evening, I wrote a statement for the investigators, attaching evidence, call logs, and every message she'd ever sent me about the family trust. With each click of the keyboard, the fog in my mind lifted. Margaret thought inheritance meant wealth, but my grandmother had left me something far greater, clarity. And with that clarity, I was finally done being afraid. 2 weeks later, the headlines hit the local news. Prominent socialite under investigation for document forgery. Margaret Whitman's picture was everywhere. Pearls, posture, and panic. Her lawyer released a statement calling it a misunderstanding, but the investigators didn't buy it. They had timestamps, IP addresses, and call records connecting her to every move. I didn't feel joy when I saw it. I felt something quieter, justice breathing in the background. That night I got a message from Ethan. She's humiliated. Claire, she won't leave the house. Reporters are everywhere. Please, can't you withdraw the complaint? I typed, deleted, retyped. I didn't file it out of spite, Ethan. I filed it because silence is what got us here. He replied once more. If you go through with this, I don't think our marriage will survive. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed one final line, then let it end honestly. The next morning, I mailed him the divorce papers. No anger, no theatrics, just closure printed in black and white. Weeks passed. The court froze the estate inquiry, confirming that my grandmother's assets were safe and legally untouchable. But beneath the relief, I felt grief for something else. Not for Ethan, but for the illusion of the family I thought I was building. Margaret called me once, a number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, her voice was brittle. You destroyed everything, Claire. I took a slow breath. No, Margaret, I protected what wasn't yours. She laughed weakly. You sound just like your grandmother. Stubborn, sanctimonious. I smiled faintly. She'd take that as a compliment. Before she could reply, I hung up. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. The same sound I used to hear in my grandmother's garden where she'd whisper, "Protect your peace like property." I finally understood. Peace isn't inherited, it's earned. Sometimes through battle, sometimes through silence, and mine had never felt more secure. Months slipped by like dust on sunlight. The lawsuit became background noise in the Whitman circle, hushed gossip, sympathetic nods, and the quiet unraveling of a reputation once untouchable. I'd moved into one of my grandmother's seaside cottages, where the mornings smelled like salt and memory. Every corner of that house reminded me why she'd chosen me to carry her legacy, not for wealth, but for wisdom. One afternoon, as I watered her old rose bushes, a car pulled up on the gravel drive. Ethan stepped out looking older, thinner, and unsure of himself. "Claire," he said softly, "I didn't move, you shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, taking a hesitant step forward. "I just needed to see you once more. Everything's collapsed." Mom's facing charges. Dad's distanced himself and he paused, exhaling. I lost everything. I looked at him for a long moment. "No, Ethan, you didn't lose everything. You just lost the illusion of control." He smiled faintly, almost broken. "You always were stronger than I gave you credit for. I set the watering can down. You didn't have to give me credit, you just had to give me respect." He nodded, eyes glistening. I didn't know how. "Now you do," I said quietly. We stood there, separated by a fence that once bordered Grandma's garden, the same one she built to keep her roses safe from wild wind. I finally understood why she loved that fence. Not every barrier is a wall, some are protection. "I'm sorry, Claire," Ethan whispered. For all of it, I met his gaze. "I believe you, but that doesn't mean I'll let you back in." He nodded slowly, then walked away without another word. When his car disappeared down the road, I turned toward the sea. The sky had shifted to gold, and the waves moved with quiet rhythm, like forgiveness written in motion. And for the first time, I smiled without fear of who might see. A year later, my life felt like it had finally exhaled. The investigation had ended. Margaret accepted a plea deal for falsifying documents and withdrew from public life. Ethan finalized the divorce quietly without contesting a cent. And me, I stayed exactly where my grandmother wanted me, rooted but free. Every morning I brewed coffee in the little seaside kitchen, sunlight spilling across the tiles she'd once laid herself. I'd kept the cottage simple. White curtains, sealess bowls, the scent of lavender and salt. Peace didn't need extravagance. It needed honesty. When the final court papers arrived, I placed them in the old oak chest where Grandma kept her deeds. One legacy closed, another fulfilled. That night I sat by the window with her photo on my lap. "You are right," I whispered. "Greed doesn't knock. It barges in wearing pearls." The wind off the ocean carried a soft chill. Somewhere deep down, I imagined her voice again. Calm, firm, amused. "And you sent it right back out the door." I laughed through tears. Yes, I did. A week later, I turned one of the beach houses into a scholarship home for women studying business law. The kind who wanted to build, protect, and own their futures without fear of manipulation. It wasn't just charity. It was full circle. One afternoon, as I oversaw renovations, the project manager handed me a small box they'd found under a floorboard. Inside was a faded note in my grandmother's handwriting. "When you face wolves disguised as family, remember wolves fear fire, not kindness." I pressed it to my chest, tears burning quietly. She'd known. She'd seen what I would face, and she'd prepared me. As the sun set, I walked to the porch overlooking the water. The tide rose, soft and endless, washing away everything that had once held me hostage. Family wasn't the one I'd married into. Family was the one that taught me how to stand alone. I whispered into the wind, "Thank you, Grandma, for the homes and for the home within me."